Okay, we're live on Facebook now. So, hi everyone, my name is Shanotra and I'm joined by my colleague Malvika. And today we're going to be talking about the law regulating marriages between persons who are Hindus. So, to get you started, the law that governs these marriages, that is Hindu marriages, is called the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. Now, this law lays down specific conditions that are required to recognize a marriage as a valid Hindu marriage. Today, we'll be covering these different aspects and conditions of what the law talks about, basically in detail. List down, like basically in detail, explain you the conditions of a valid Hindu marriage and even punishments for those who don't comply with these conditions. The first thing we'll be covering today is who is a Hindu spouse and who does this law actually apply to. Now, if you want it, like if you want to be a Hindu spouse as the law defines it and marry under the Hindu Marriage Act, you must either be a person who is Hindu by religion. Now, this includes Virashaivas, Lingayats, or a follower of the Brahmo Pratna or Arya Samaj. It also includes people who are Buddhist, Jain, or Sikhs by religion, or you could also be someone who is specifically defined under the act, but not someone who is either Muslim, Christian, Parsi, or Jew by religion. If you fall under any of these categories, then you can get married under the Hindu Marriage Act. Now, let's understand what makes a marriage between two Hindus a legal Hindu marriage. For a marriage to be legally recognized as a Hindu marriage, certain conditions must be met. Now, we'll be explaining some of these conditions in detail much ahead in the video, but just to go over them quickly. First, the couple needs to be seen as Hindu by law. Second, the husband should be over 21 years and the wife should be over 18 years of age when the wedding takes place. Third, both husband and wife should be of sound mind. Fourth, neither husband nor wife can be married at the time of them marrying each other. Fifth, the husband and wife should not be in a prohibited relationship. And finally, husband and wife should not be sapindas of one another. We'll explain what prohibited relationships and sapindas are in a bit. But if any of these conditions are not met, then the law may not recognize the marriage as a valid or a legal Hindu marriage. In some cases, you may even face punishment for not complying with these conditions. Now, Malvika will take you over some of the issues of sound mind, like the condition of like having a sound mind while getting married, relationship status, and minimum age.
Yeah, so when it comes to Hindu marriages, the law is very clear. It states that if people with mental illnesses or people with unsound mind are the people getting into the marriage, then such marriages are not valid. That means that the law is trying to say that people with mental illnesses or those who are unsound usually do not have the capacity to enter into valid legal marriages. So this means that a person planning on getting married should be able to give valid consent under the law. Now, if you are not able to give consent because of unsoundness of mind or because of a mental disorder, which actually makes you unfit for marriage or for the procreation of children, or if you get any recurrent attacks of insanity, then your marriage is not valid. Now, when it comes to the definitions of mental disorder, insanity, unsoundness of mind, the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 itself does not define anything, but there are other laws that you can refer to understand the definitions. I'll go through some of them. For example, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 discusses the concept of mental illness. It says that it's a substantial disorder of thinking, mood, perception, orientation, or memory that impairs a person's judgment, behavior, or capacity to recognize reality or the ability to meet the ordinary day to day activities of life. So, such people are also classified as persons with disabilities if such persons have any mental impairments. But there's also another law known as the Mental Health Care Act 2017. It talks about mental illness and your right to access mental health care treatment. Here in this law, mental illness is defined as a health condition which involves a substantial disorder, again, of thinking, mood, perception, memory, etc. It also discusses how abuse of drugs or alcohol, for instance, may also result in a mental condition. But it very clearly says that a mental illness is not mental retardation, which is incomplete intellectual development. So if it is a person who is mentally retarded trying to get into a Hindu marriage, again, this person will not be able to give consent, hence, the marriage will not be valid. Now, persons with mental illnesses have a lot of rights under the law, and that you can see in our mental health explainer on our website. But more than anything, when it comes to the definition of what is unsound mind, which is what's written in the law, it is a legal term which is used to describe a person's state of mind when they are incapable of making decisions for themselves. Now, there is no precise definition for unsound mind given in the law, but it is interchangeably used with terms such as insanity in many judgments in family law. And it is a term also used to describe various degrees of mental disorders when a person is incapable of making decisions. And in such situations, there's also an option for guardians to make the decisions. But when it comes to Hindu marriages, it's very clearly given that if the person is not able to make the decision of getting married, then the marriage itself is invalid. Now, another point which is very important is your relationship status at the time of getting married. Now, at the time of getting married, it is very obvious that if you already have a husband or you already have a wife, then and you marry someone else, then the marriage with the second person is invalid. And you will need to actually divorce your first husband or first wife to actually marry someone else. So only divorcees can actually enter into a marriage again. But if it's your first marriage and you already have a spouse, then this is a crime of bigamy. This is something which is common in many religions, but at the same time, it is a crime in India, which is punishable up to 10 years jail time and a fine. And in many situations, such cases are taken to court, and it is not an easy process actually to get concrete evidence or proof that your spouse may have been married at the time of marriage. But again, all this rests upon your lawyer and the kind of pleadings that happen in court. Now, moving on, when it comes to minimum age for Hindu marriage, it is very clear that the minimum age of a groom is should be 21, and the minimum age of a bride should be 18. And the punishment for not adhering to this requirement and marrying may extend to 15 days imprisonment or a fine of rupees 1,000. Now, at the time when you go to get your marriage registered with your marriage officer in the district, there he will very clearly ask you your ages, and age criteria is very important when it comes to registration of Hindu marriages. Further, if the person marrying is below the age of 18, then this is also child marriage under the law, and there's a whole set of punishments for forcing a girl child who's below the age of 18 to get married. But at the same time, if such a marriage happens, it is upon the child to actually take a decision whether they want to annul the marriage or whether they want to stay in it. But it's since the groom's age is over 21 years in Hindu marriage, let's say that the groom was around 19 or 20 when he got married to the bride who's above 18. In such situations, it's basically important to note that even though getting married between 18 and 21 won't be child marriage under the law, but under Hindu marriage, it will be an invalid marriage because the groom has not met the age criteria of 21 years. Now, Shanotra will take you through some aspects of prohibited relationships and sapindas.
So as Malvika said, initially I covered sapindas and prohibited relationships quickly as certain conditions for a valid Hindu marriage. Now to elaborate a little on that, The law basically says that if you and your spouse are within certain degrees of prohibited relationships, then your marriage will not be a valid Hindu marriage. Now, to explain what prohibited relationship is, if one spouse is a lineal ascendant of the other, then such relationship would be a prohibited relationship amongst a few other uh, relationships. Now, a lineal ascendant includes a father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, great grandfather, great grandmother, and so on. Basically, you can't marry any of these people if they're like directly your direct ascendants. Now, it's also prohibited relationship if one spouse is the husband or wife of a lineal ascendant or descendant. Now, lineal descendants are children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, and so on. So basically, you can't marry the spouse of any of your ascendants or descendants. Now, other forms of prohibited relationships would be if, say, two spouses are brother and sister, uncle and niece, aunt and nephew, or even first cousins. Then, more forms of prohibited relationships would be when a spouse is the ex spouse or widower of your sibling. Or your father or mother sibling, or grandmother or grandfather sibling. Now, any of these, like all of these, are prohibited relationships, and if you marry any of them, your marriage is not going to be a valid Hindu marriage as per the Hindu Marriage Act. Now, coming to Sapindas, Sapinda relationships are form of prohibited relationships under Hindu marriage. But to explain you a bit more in detail, Sapinda is someone who is within or has common ancestor relatives within 3 generations, either from your mother's side of the family or 5 generations from your father's side of the family. Now, if you marry a person who falls under any of these categories, then your marriage is not going to be a valid marriage. In fact, there's a punishment for 1 month imprisonment and either 1 month imprisonment or a fine of rupees 1,000 if you marry a, a person who you have a Sapinda relationship. But it's also important to know that there are certain subsects that allow Sapinda relationships and only certain kinds of Sapinda relationships, and those marriages will not attract this punishment. They will be considered as valid Hindu marriages. Now, Malvika will discuss registration of marriages and even give you a little overview of divorce under Hindu law.
Yeah, so when it comes to registration of marriages, it's important to note that the Supreme Court of India in 2006 made it mandatory to register all marriages in every state. So each state basically has its own marriage rules. Like, for example, in Andhra Pradesh, it's known as Andhra Pradesh Hindu Marriage Registration Rules. Uttar Pradesh has Hindu Marriage Registration Rules, 1973. Punjab has Hindu Marriage Punjab Registration Rules, 1960, and so on. So this means that in every state, every state is governed by certain Hindu marriage rules. And Section 8 of the Hindu Marriage Act very clearly states that for a marriage, Hindu marriage that you have to register Hindu marriages. So the registration process is a very common process. It is basically the first step in the marriage registration process is to apply to the marriage officer within the jurisdiction where either the marriage was solemnized or where either party of the marriage was residing. Then both the parties will then need to fill in the application form, sign it, submit 2 photos, give your marriage certificate, invitation card of marriage, age and address, proof of both the parties, etc. Then an affidavit of notary or an executive magistrate, an affidavit has to be notarized afterwards to prove that the couple is married under Hindu Marriage Act 1955, is in a fit condition, and proof that the parties are not related through degrees of prohibition or sapindas, as Shanotra had earlier mentioned. All these documents are then attested by a gazetted officer, and the parties will have to deposit a fee with the cashier at the marriage registrar. And then basically what happens is once the application has been submitted and the documents have been verified, the concerned marriage officer will assign a date of registration when the marriage certificate document will be issued to you. This means you can prove your marriage was registered through a marriage certificate. Now, when it comes to divorce, When it comes to Hindu divorce, especially, the law is known as the Hindu Divorce Act, and there is the law governing Hindu divorce is Section 13, and the law basically recognizes emotional and marital needs of both the spouses and includes many legal obligations to those owning property also in it. For example, just because you have gone through a divorce does not mean that your marital relationship has ended. It may also include that some financial support continues, parental support continues, domestic responsibilities may continue, etc. Then some legal obligations may continue, such as alimony or maintenance may still be need to be paid, parental responsibility may need to be paid, etc. But certain aspects of marital relationships which made the marriage itself, such as emotional support or sexual relationships, all end when it comes to a divorce. After you get a divorce, you also have, there is nothing stopping you from getting remarried under Hindu Marriage Act or the Special Marriage Act. That's a right that you have. And the law provides for very specific reasons under which you can file a divorce. When it comes to ill treatment, if your spouse has been cruel to you, has had sexual intercourse with another person, or has left you, you can file a divorce. When it comes to illnesses, if your spouse is suffering from a venereal disease that can spread to you, or your spouse is suffering from a mental disorder, you can file a divorce. But please note that leprosy is not considered to be a venereal disease anymore. So if your spouse has leprosy, it is not a ground for divorce. Then, if your spouse has withdrawn from you or is presumed to be dead for over 7 years, or if your spouse has renounced the world by entering into some sort of religious order, then also you can file a divorce. There are also situations where if a judicial separation order was passed by a court and your spouse and you haven't been living together for over a year, then you can file a divorce. And finally, if your spouse has converted to another religion, conversion, forced conversion especially, is a ground for divorce, which you can definitely go for. All of this is given on our website also if you want to read in detail. Now, Shanotra will discuss invalid marriages and void marriages.
So basically, a void marriage is one that is invalid from the very beginning. Now, in like marriages that did not fulfill certain criteria are recognized as invalid marriages, and basically, the Hindu Marriage Act clearly lays down certain situations under which marriage is to be regarded as an invalid or a void marriage from the very beginning. And these don't need to be formally annulled, as I said, like it's invalid from the very beginning. So these situations are basically where one of the parties or spouse is living at. So basically, if the spouse of one of the parties to a marriage is living at a time, or if the parties are within degrees of prohibited relationships, which I explained earlier, or if at times where parties are subindas to each other, except where certain customs allow it. So in these three cases, the marriage is considered to be void from the very beginning, and you do not need to go in for a formal annulment. But in cases of voidable marriages, you do have to go ahead for an annulment, and it needs to be specifically applied for by one of the parties. Situations where a marriage would be voidable can be either when one of the spouses is impotent, or if any of the conditions for a valid marriage, which we explained earlier, were not complied with, or at the time of the marriage, the woman was pregnant with someone else's child, or if in cases where basically consent wasn't obtained, or consent was obtained by either fraud or force, like how Malvika had explained, like, the necessity of consent in cases of valid marriages. So if any of these situations apply to you, you can go ahead and apply for an annulment. We have had a separate live chat on what annulments are and how you can go about them. The video of that chat can be found on our YouTube channel. Do check it out if you're interested in knowing more about what that is and how do you go about it. So today we covered the basics of what Hindu Marriage Act is and what are the conditions required to be fulfilled, who can get married, who cannot get married. And if you have any more specific questions on Hindu marriages, you can drop a comment under this video. You can also check out our explainer on the Nyaya website, or even go to the Ask Nyaya tab. and leave your question there if you feel that your query is not being answered by any of our explanations. We'll revert to you very soon. I hope you found this session useful. See you next week. Good night.